the crowdfunding panel, successful crowdfunders around me. I'm Alspach. I'm the Startups and Venture Capital Editor at the Boston Business Journal, and have a daily email newsletter that you guys should sign up for if you're interested. That's my plug for myself. You go to bostonbusinessjournal.com/startups. So I'm just going to introduce the panelists. Aman Advani is a co-founder of Ministry of Supply, which makes men's dress shirts, one of which he's wearing, I assume. And they make men's dress shirts that adapt to the body and don't get sweaty, which has obvious advantages in situations like this especially. The company holds the Kickstarter fashion record with $429,000 raised in July on a goal of $30,000. Aman is studying for an MBA at MIT and formerly was a consultant with Deloitte. To my left is Andrew Kitzenberg, founder of Memory on Hand, which makes a wristband that you all have now, which doubles as a flash drive. The company raised $13,700 on Kickstarter in March on a goal of $10,000. Andrew launched Memory on Hand in 2010 and is best in called Brad. And then on my far left is Gould. He's the president of LifeCycle, which makes bracelets out of waste bicycle chains. All right. This is a very easy, opportunity to describe companies. I don't have to actually really say all that much. It's awesome. Praise over this, off our chest. The company, LifeCycle, raised $11,500 on Kickstarter in February on a goal of $10,000. Ben's also an industrial designer with Aqua Leisure Industries, and he graduated from the Pratt Institute and previously was a designer for Hasbro. So this is the panel. They're all successful Kickstarter fundraisers, but obviously Kickstarter is not the only platform out there. So I thought it would be really interesting at first just to find out, go down the road, why did you choose Kickstarter? Did you look at different platforms and what the advantages of Kickstarter?
I did not look at other platforms, and since I did mine, which started back in February and ended in March, there's been a blossoming of maybe half a dozen other crowdfunding platforms. So had I started right now, I'd be certainly searching around much more. But Kickstarter struck me as kind of a forerunner at the time. I don't know if it necessarily still is, but that was reason enough for me to think it's Kickstarter.
Yeah, same for me. With Kickstarter at the time, and currently it's still the biggest platform out there in terms of users and exposure. But also on the product side, we did look at a few other alternatives, but for a product, kind of a product launch, Kickstarter was the best fit for us, best fit for a product in general. So that was kind of our criteria for picking our platform.
For us, it was probably a year plus of development cycles over and over, new iterations of the shirt, new iterations of the products, all the way until last May. And in May, we realized when we had our secret sauce, we were ready to launch. So for us, it was all about just coming on the big way and finally saying we're ready to launch our first real product. It was really a way to bring this product to market without with possibly the best audience out there. We found it's a very tolerable audience, and we're companies already, and people are just it's one of the best audiences out there in terms of really working with us before you rightly launch.
Did you realize beforehand that the publicity aspect of it was going to be potentially as big of a reason to do it as the money itself? I mean, did you actually find that to be the case? And how did you when you're looking back at it, how do you weigh the publicity benefit versus the funding benefit?
Yeah, sure. I think the funding benefit, I think people that are newer to Kickstarter initially think that the funding benefit is actually a seed round or you're giving up equity or something like that. And I'm sure everyone gets much more familiar with Kickstarter than that. But so from a funding element, it's really just it's aggressive sales in your first few days on the market. But you're right, the publicity angle was much bigger for us. I think that
I would agree with them on there. We were planning on Kickstarter to break our campaign for us as well, and utilize it as a product launch to get some exposure. And we were expecting that and tried to utilize that in our advantage. We found out halfway through that it wasn't as big of a PR as we had expected, but we got a lot out of it in terms of product exposure and ultimately to different products in this case.
In my case, the LifeCycle bracelet is such an unusual product. There's really no precedent or place for something that's made from entirely reclaimed materials and has transcended from junk to high fashion. So to me, that concept was always really exciting, and having a chance to put it out there, the goal was not only to raise money, but as a product out to raise money, that again proved that you can generate the idea. And since then, it's again given me a place to direct people to say, here's proof. We're really into this. And I can direct people to that accessible page, and that has proven kind of instantly wasted. And having yourself launch and exposed for the first time on the web, especially with the video and express and write up the preparation, it's an opportunity for other editorials to pick up on. I was published in Wired, I was published in Gould, and a dozen different kinds of green design magazines and websites. So it was very exciting. It was beyond my expectations. I think one other thing to add too, just on that note, is that the difference between publicity and funding for us is really about business motivation. So for funding or for pre-sales, it's about really pushing a revenue driver, which isn't what we're looking at. But for publicity, it's really pushing a story, which is what we're much more excited about. The story of who we are, why we're doing this, what we're doing, and what we think this big movement is all about. So that making that publicity is so much more important than really sharing the story than the actual dollars or one of the first things we learned is
yes, did anyone sell? And actually, I was going to ask that. How did you decide what the rewards were? Or obviously you had your product, but how did you decide what was going to be worth what?
Yeah, so the easiest approach is that we're going to be pushing our product on the platform. But I think the deeper answer is just that what we saw looking at previous projects was that somewhere around the 50% donation mark is where Kickstarters kind of have their limits. They're willing to really support a project early on as long as it doesn't feel like I'm giving you $95 to produce a CD, let's say. Whereas in their mind, they have this willingness to pay. You can roughly double that, and then somewhere below that, make sure your reward level is in there. So basically, they're not looking to put this as charity, but they are looking to support a business going on as long as the reward has some correlation with it.
So what does the person get as a result of the donation?
The question was, what did the person get? So it was each of your products, right?
Yeah. So you can do multiple tier levels. So we had a product range from anywhere from $10 to $5,000, depending on what people's appetite is.
Did you find that people gave just enough to get the reward, or did some people give, a little bit more? How did that work?
For us, the overwhelming majority gave dead on, with a few exceptions that I'm guessing were total accidents.
Same for you?
No, not really. I actually have a few backers that wanted the lowest end bracelet. I do a variety of bracelets based on the different finish that's put on them. The low end being powder coated and the high end being 10 karat gold plated. And someone requested the lowest end bracelet, but then donated $1,000. So of course I contacted that person to find out why, and they just really want to support the project. So again, putting the content out there, you get people excited.
And for us, we came into it looking at it as an e-commerce platform to get a product out there and sell, just like any other retail location. So we pushed it out to try to generate customers. But at the time, we were already selling in retail locations, so we had our merchandising units that we sold to 4 dozens. And so we were trying to grow those packages as well. And that's something that's changed with Kickstarter.
back to sort of your own planning and envisioning of what was going to happen, in retrospect, what do you wish you had spent more time on in the planning stage, and what maybe did you spend too much time on certain things in retrospect?
Yeah, I'd love to say this. On the planning side, one thing we learned is that you can never do enough outreach. And for us, it was finding the influencers. And so reaching out to people who would share your campaign, share your project, and thinking beyond the standard media outlets, but reaching smaller forums and online communities and different websites where there are people who are interested in what startups and small businesses are doing and want to help build guys and share, just even share a link, share a video. That's something that we could have planned. We could have planned a lot more and try to identify more of those influencers and reach out.
I'm flying solo, and my preparation and the timing for me was all really based around my personal life. When I launched, I had just gotten married and just returned from honeymooning, and previous to that, I left my position at Hasbro, and so I came back and still glowing from the wedding and honeymoon and all that, but looking for a job. So I started my campaign amidst trying to figure out how I'm going to support my wife. So on the bright side of that, I wasn't really depending on anybody else. The control was entirely in my hands, but of course, being a solo entrepreneur, there's a lot of responsibilities and a lot of stress that comes along with that. So I think in retrospect, it's not so personal. Certainly, there were things that I've prepared. I've since successfully kicked off a second Kickstarter campaign for a friend, but I organized everything for him. I was fully employed for that.
I think for us it was just understanding what the actual workload was going to be. We wouldn't have ever, by the time that the product launched, we were up to about 9 of us in the office. And had no idea that this was a full-time job for each of us. So a couple of good examples I like to share is that before the campaign, as the campaign was starting, we reached out to about 150 blogs with customized notes for each on why this project made sense for them in the future, why their readers would appreciate this. So something like that in itself is a full-time job for somebody for 2 weeks, let's say, of just finding 150 blogs and justifying why it makes sense for them. Another example I like to share is that somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 messages came in the course of the Kickstarter campaign. Everything from what size am I going to have to can I be a distributor in a small country X somewhere. So it was just all sorts of things coming in, and that itself again is one person's full-time job, and doing the video is one person's full-time job. So I think for us it was understanding that everything else really pauses once we started crowdfunding.
I have another thing to add on. Something I think gets overlooked is the production and supply side of the project. For us, we were already producing the product, and we had our manufacturers set up, factories we were working with. But as there are more and more Kickstarter projects out there, we hear and see more projects that are delivering late or unable to deliver, or sometimes we don't hear that they're delivering at a loss. And so I would really stress, especially for a product business, understanding the supply chain, the time it takes to produce a product, and the true costs, and making sure that you're really detailed about those things.
Great. Well, what was the biggest factor in your success, do you think?
Well, I think as I've learned from just listening to the two of you, and there's some clear differences between the three of us and the three of our projects and the three of our companies. For me, I think that my strength was that I was one guy, and I had an idea, and I presented my campaign as a personal story. And, I think that was really the strength, is that people tied into my passion and my drive to make this thing happen. And so my video took place in my basement, in my workshop where I produce these things, surrounded by tools and all that. And I think that, at least a large portion, large enough to support me, of Kickstarter supporters are interested because
appreciate this idea that you come in super humble, that you're ready to just accept the support of Kickstarter backers. Is without putting myself in the shoes of a backer, I think what we saw was one of the most valuable things in the world is just that we were out there as people, not as some big giant companies watching their today.
Did you actually produce your own video or hire someone to tell?
The question is whether they produce their own videos or hire somebody.
Yeah, so fortunately for us, we've got a guy on our team that's just really good at videos, but that's not to overshadow the importance of the video. I think that the video, on a more tactical side, the video was by far the most important tactical feature we had. So many of our backers talk about never actually scrolling through the product, but just playing videos, and the ability to share the video easily as well.
So I assume that you all encountered some surprises, during or after the campaign. What were those surprises?
We've got a good one. The supply chain for 14 times what you expected is not the same as 1 time what you expected. So we figured that out the hard way. So we've had to scratch everything from our smallest, our button suppliers, all the way up to obviously our sewers. I've had to completely rebuild. Probably midway through the campaign, we realized there was no chance for our manufacturer in New York to make it. So we've had to go out to LA. But the way I think we've at least partly covered that is by being super transparent with all the backers and showing them exactly what it takes to bring a shirt from yarn to their door. So the biggest surprise for us was understanding that there is some danger in exceeding it.
Did you have any idea that you could exceed your goal by that much, or just any idea that the idea that you had was as big as it was, or resonated the way it did? Do you have any inkling on that?
Absolutely. I mean, we were all just crossing our fingers and thinking if the campaign gets to 29,500, is it unethical for us to throw an extra 500 and call it on? But realistically, we thought it was going to come down to the last minute, and we're just so pleasantly and happily surprised, and sometimes overwhelmed by how well it turned out.
We had a big surprise, and that was the time it was to keep up with the campaign, with the incoming inquiries and the outreach. Really stressing the outreach. A good example is in our campaign, we were successfully funded early on in the first 13 days. And after that, we had a trade show, and we weren't able to continue that outreach, reach out to media, and we saw our campaign just plateau. And it was all a factor of time. We were a two-man team, didn't have the time to reach out, and so that really caught us off guard. And I guess that goes back to planning as well. But it is a huge time commitment to take on one of these campaigns.
As an industrial designer, whenever you enter a research and development process, you're always trying to anticipate surprises and then adapt as you go along. I launched the campaign. I already knew that I could create this object and recreate it, but creating it in volume and then going out there and sourcing this waste material, and then also learning how to do it efficiently, mechanize the process, build the tools that I need. Each of those steps was a surprise. And each of them had their own challenges. I'm manufacturing every piece in-house by hand with the aid of just the machines that I can build myself.
Great. I'd love to just also hear, did you go into this thinking that you were going to have to, it was going to be a full-time job during the course of the campaign? I mean, did it end up being that way? And, did you find you had to spend more time on the campaign after it started than you had expected?
I think we anticipated that the actual 33 days that we ran the campaign would be a full-time job. I think what we didn't expect was that, the 90 days after that as well, so would be a full-time job. So going to school no longer became an option. It was just, we had to really focus on making sure we were running.
Yes. Very much a full-time job.
No.
And what were some of the, we mentioned publicity, seeking and responding to emails. Were there other things that, maybe you hadn't expected that came along?
I was expecting the life culture to be more responsive to my product. But in the end, I think bicyclists can't help but see what I'm producing as trash. They can't help but look at it and see its roots. Whereas the fashionistas of the world can see, that leap from trash to jewelry, and they appreciate the distance that it's traveled. So it was interesting to me to find out who was attracted to the product and who just didn't care for it.
Going back to that question, my answer would be completely underestimated our time. We were two people, and we were trying to run a business as well. So we already had customers, daily customer service, and so we try to allocate part of our day to Kickstarter, and we quickly found out that it was a full-time job for more than 2 people. And so when we got pulled away to do things like our trade show, that really was damaging on kind of the rest of it.
So it sounds like one of the things to realize about Kickstarter is just that going into it is not something you do on the side, and that it perhaps. So for all of you, was it the start of your company? Andrew, I think your company had already had a product, but for the other two, it was your first product launch.
We'd sold probably prior to the launch. We probably sold between 400 or 500 shirts, just mostly friends, family, extended network, just in terms of upwards of a dozen iterations of the product. This was our true product launch, our true go-to-market.
So it should sort of be seen as this is you're getting your company off the ground, not just hey, I'm raising money on the internet.
That goes exactly back to the point of the email here, the vulnerability you come out there with it. I think we've seen some projects that didn't go as well, and if you look usually closely at those, a lot of times it's not about the product, it's about how they present it. We saw another clothing company have a tough time raising money. Looking at it, was kind of like, the update came from the head of the women's division of this company. It was a great company, actually, well. But stuff like we hear the head of the women's division is presenting stuff that you kind of think, some giant company who's just trying to use Kickstarter as a sales platform. I think that's what doesn't people Kickstarter. It's the only difference in other Amazon companies.
How does raising money on Kickstarter compare in your mind to possibly raising traditional funding from angels or something like that? Where is Kickstarter sort of for companies that aren't necessarily ready to raise additional angel funding, or how does it work in your mind?
So for us, it was they didn't have to be exclusive from each other. You can still raise an angel around because going to much different places than raising money on Kickstarter. The biggest benefit when you're talking about actual funding for Kickstarter, the term funding is best in that your funding from a cash flow perspective. You're getting the money up front, which you can then use to pay your suppliers, which a newer company can't do. So the idea that you're funneling people towards pre-orders rather than sales, which you can have the product in hand. But otherwise, in terms of actual funding, it becomes a platform that tends to help the market see what people think, and then if it goes well, gain that credit.
Did you weigh it against traditional funding?
Well, I really couldn't see it wasn't the right approach for my product. My product, at first glance, is going to look like a traditional craft of some kind, and that's why I think Kickstarter was so perfect for this. It's really geared towards the grassroots campaigns where you get a public to voice their opinion, and they have the opportunity to say good, bad, and they do so in form of support. If I were to walk into a boardroom without having any proof that the product sells, that people are excited by it, I would get kicked out and laughed at. Walking in with trash without proof is just trash.
What were your thoughts?
I think my take on it is that, especially for a product business, it's very difficult, and there are very few products out there where you can go to an investor and just say off the bat that you're going to have 50,000 units, 100,000 Kickstarter does is it validates that product, whether it's selling a few hundred or tens of thousands of units. It validates it to a certain level and allows the entrepreneur to move on to the business and determine what the right decisions are in future investment.
So in terms of the next steps for you guys, would crowdfunding with some equity involved and debt involved be something you would consider once it's legal next year? Is that a possibility?
For us, probably not, just because we're seeking our seed rounds right now, probably hopefully closing in January. So for us, I think just from a timing perspective, it wouldn't be something. I think one other danger of having a lot of stakeholders in the small businesses, you have a lot of voices change the direction of the company. So I know there's Bonobos. They're a paint company that started at Stanford in 2007, and I think it's fairly public. But their initial seed round of roughly less than $1 million was comprised of a lot of investors, anywhere from the $10,000 to $100,000 range. And we've talked to them a lot about how the ramifications. What happens if you have all those voices in your ear? So my fear would be to make sure that if that ever becomes the case, that folks are able to balance a lot of different voices, but capital.
Right now, LifeCycle is selling through online retail sites. I'm on uncommonGoods.com, which has been a great support. They buy a few hundred units at a time. But I am seeking that really high-end luxury distribution. I have a meeting in 9 days with maybe jewelry buyers at so that's next.
I think for us, we see that there's a great combination of crowdfunding and conventional financing, whether that's debt financing or investment. And I would highly recommend for any company that's going out with a product to look at all those options and really try to stage it out. Crowdfunding is a great way to get started, great way to validate a product. And then as you grow and you generate customers and accounts, looking at the next stage, that's debt financing. A lot of great people to work with out there, and those are usually the next step in financing that kind of growing business. Because with crowdfunding, you're usually trying to keep the equity in your business, and finding alternatives like debt financing is a great way to do that. And as you continue to grow, and if it's fascinating, look at the alternatives of angel funding.
For the folks here that are sort of more interested in the tech opportunities and crowdfunding, are there lessons that you learned that you feel like would potentially would also apply to a tech company, some sort of website or new service that would go on Kickstarter? Obviously not the supply chain lessons, but what advice would you have for them?
I think for us it would be the same, just understanding the ramifications of scaling quickly and being prepared for what that looks like. So for us as a product company, it's the same as somebody let's say Pebble who's consumer products meets technology, or somebody who's a pure technology play. The idea of being able to scale quickly and being prepared for the upside or the downside, whatever comes with it. They understand the ramifications of scale.
I would say, going back to getting exposure and utilizing it to generate first users, beta testers, but being able to utilize it in a PR push, get your software, get your app, whatever it is, get it out there, try to validate, and that'll be your true test, whether your product, software, whatever it is, whether it's fit for market.
In contrast to the three of us that are all selling products where you can hold it, look at it, and immediately understand what it's about. When you're talking about a tech company, it's not the same situation. But I think that you need to have that same effect on someone. You have to get your idea across immediately. And so my advice would be to boil your message down to as short a phrase as possible. Work on your elevator speech. Make sure that you communicate quickly and clearly. And if you do that effectively, you may sell. If not, you're just going to lose their attention.
Are there other lessons that in retrospect, became clear? Maybe not during the campaign, but now, a few months later.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Just any lessons that a few months later it was sort of clear, like for instance, you had mentioned that the publicity maybe wasn't necessarily something you realized was going to be so important during the campaign, but later, are there other pieces of advice you got for people?
Get your press release together. Get your contact list together. Be ready to just launch everything all at once. All the guns have to fire off all at the same time. Because if you let that wave of excitement drop off, you're quickly going to lose the momentum. And I think that Kickstarter, those 30 days, the 20 days, or however long, it's all about keeping that momentum going.
I would go on kind of the aftermath of the campaign, and we've had about 6 months since the end of our project, and what I said earlier, keeping up with your backers, and also utilizing your campaign as a validation tool to salespeople, to distributors, to whoever it is. You generated, for a successful campaign, you generated a lot of support and a lot of validation. Continue to use that in your favor and whatever you're trying to pursue.
We had a lot of demand for transparency through the campaign, so we put out a lot of updates that were very time-consuming, and it took a lot of thought for the entire team to get together. Depending from where exactly we are in the process, or how we're progressing, making the shirts during the campaign, to also stretch goals, which I'm sure everybody's seen different companies handle different than Kickstarter. But for us, it was new colors coming out, a new pattern coming out, a new cut coming out. I think our last one was sending all the backers' names to the moon or into space. Still have to get on that one, but we'll do that for the shirts. But just I guess preparing yourself for the activity during the campaign, which means get all your guns ready to go on day one, but then get ready to keep that momentum up by finding new avenues during the campaign, putting out compelling updates and compelling stretch goals to keep the attention of those people that are checking out once or twice or 3 times.
And it would be great to hear just where you're at with your company right now, whether have you fulfilled all your requirements in the campaign.
Yeah, so we are running late on our premier product, which is the Apollo shirt, which is what our project was meant to send. We've probably shipped out about 15% of the orders of everything. As soon as things come in, we ship them right back out. But fortunately for us, like I said, I think the Kickstarter community is so incredibly tolerant and understands that not meeting the goal is not necessarily a lack of capability, but in our case, it's just the scale factor we didn't anticipate. But really being transparent with them has been incredible. The amount of positive sentiment we've gotten back from sharing what our supply chain looks like and exactly who our suppliers are and where along the process the shirts are is really quite anything.
Do they have an opportunity to cancel?
We always,
The question was, do they have the opportunity to cancel?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One thing we always say, if anyone does come up with a negative comment of any kind, so we by no means want to hold anyone's money or ransom or anything like that. So we've had probably 2,800 backers. We've probably refunded about 10 to 15, and comfortably do so just because our intention is not to hold this money. One thing I know is it is, I guess, against Kickstarter's policy, so we do it through PayPal. So they're not set up as an e-commerce site. They're not meant to be. So the idea of a refund or any kind of product guarantees are off Kickstarter.
What does Kickstarter take as a percent?
What does Kickstarter take? 5%?
They take 5%, and then Amazon payments takes anywhere between 1.9 and 2.9. Going down as you raise more. So once you cross it down, it's 1.9 plus 30 cents per transaction.
So they took 4% in my case. So in total, I lost 9%. Still totally worth it.
Okay.
Yeah. So long as you do the numbers out at the beginning, I guess it's better.
And Andrew is memory on hand, totally fulfilled with its obligation.
Yep, we totally fulfill our obligation, and that was, like I said earlier, because we already had our supply chain set up and had our factories in place. And moving forward after Kickstarter, the focus of our business has been to grow our distribution channels, get our product into stores, and so we have really utilized our Kickstarter project in our sales to say that we have a lot of validation, a lot of people who support this product, and so that's allowed us to expand our distribution to new markets, get into more campus, college bookstores, and even into national retailers.
You're doing national retailers. That's where I am now. LifeCycle as a concept, if I can get this first product to launch, I'd like to see LifeCycle become a brand of a variety of different products that are all made entirely from recycled materials. That's the long-term goal. And I think that this product really embodies that philosophy that we need to take a second look at what we're throwing out. That there's still a lot of value left in all of our trash. So if I can get some major retailers to adopt that philosophy and help me to market it, sell it, then I can really begin to build an entire design house around that concept.
Let's take some questions from the audience. And maybe bring a microphone if you want. Does that make sense? Okay. All right.
So would you guys recommend using Kickstarter only when you have a final product, or if you have 3 kind of finalists, would you recommend using it as kind of like a final market vote on which one to win for your final product down?
No. I would say go with the final product for sure. I think people are ready to commit to something they're sure commitment. I think one of the most resonating messages we put out there was that we do have the manufacturers lined up. We do have everything again from buttons to sewers lined up. And that confidence that Kickstarter can get. In our case, we had to replace all of them, which was a shame. But yeah, the confidence, I guess, of giving Kickstarter confidence that you can deliver on this. That it's not 3 concepts. That it's one product that you're confident and it's ready to go to market.
His question was whether you should go with 3 different products and use Kickstarter as a means of deciding which one wins out, or if you should go with one. And I was going to recommend, I did sort of a combination of the 2. I launched my project around bracelets, but along with that, I sold keychains and earrings. And I sold many of those items that I did bracelets themselves. So if they're related, then group it together, but you have to do it in a really cohesive way that people will understand this is a product line. Otherwise, you're going to confuse people.
And I'll bring that back to one of my other comments about knowing your supply chain and knowing your production. You're going in with 3 different products that can easily come back to bite you. So definitely come in with knowing what product you want and then knowing everything that goes into the production.
Try to solicit support from professionals instead of money, let's say like marketing groups, instead of supporting money, supporting professional services.
Kickstarter's not really set up in that way. Although once you have Kickstarter and again proof that there's interest, then you certainly have a better case to take that to someone who can help you in other professional aspects. It'd be great if there was another crowdsourcing.
Reward, but instead of defining, let's say, the amount of money, like a marketing advice or a sales advice or connections to some,
Interesting concept.
So was the question about basically a trade of product for services?
You are starting companies, so some of the help you can get is, let's say, marketing people or someone who can help you get some connections. So you give them the same, same prices, but instead of you give me $100 and I give you X, what I sort of solicit is advice or
So my recommendation there outside of crowdfunding is absolutely for any kind of lean startup entrepreneur, that's a great approach. Any chance you have to gain additional services at the means of your product or at a lesser cost? Absolutely. Engage in that kind of practice.
I think for us, it's again, I think it's that on too, but that offering your core product as a reward is what really catches people's eye. So if your core competency is the advice or that was your product, I think that would probably be reasonable. I also think for us, I think for us, advice isn't free. I think we are always looking to talk to people about, when people are starting campaigns, they'll say we love talking about, what kind of work it takes to put in, what you should prepare for, and stuff like that. And I think generally the startup community is pretty open about, always being there for different people that we ask advice every day and we get advice.
An amendment to that also, people offered their advice unsolicited throughout the campaign. A lot of people had ideas that they wanted to share, other products they wanted to see, different areas to market, different people that I should get in touch with. A lot of that stuff just kind of came out of the woodwork without asking. But that's sort of the beauty of putting yourself in the public eye. People are going to respond, and you never know what they're going to tell you.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. I'm from Right Driver. Thanks for being here. Kyle, thanks for moderating. Thanks for sharing your cool products. We're considering Kickstarter. We're on WeFunder right now. And I was just curious, in terms of crafting your video, how much time did you spend putting together that video? I think it's, as you guys said, one of the most important things of your campaign.
I made my own video. I go into art school to learn how to do video, at least a little bit. So I sort of dragged through it. I spent more time writing it than I did filming it, but probably more time editing it. In total, maybe days. I think so long as you have a clear message, your video doesn't have to be spectacular. And in many cases, I think that having a lot of the effects and dazzle is just going to confuse people and kind of turn them off and make you see things succeed.
So we're along the same lines. It's me and my partner Jeff. We don't have artistic background, so we put together our message and we spent a lot of time on that. And then within a day, we did all of our filming and just hired someone off of Craigslist at a reasonable price. And they did a great job for us. Shot in a day, I think within a week, he had that edited, and we had a video together.
For us, it's probably the total opposite. But we probably spent somewhere between 80 and 100 hours, and we did it twice. We ended up relaunching a new video about the weekend. So one great thing about Kickstarter, everybody knows, is that you can update anything other than backer levels have already been back. You can update anything. So we actually switched out our video about a weekend, just to shift more for that sincerity. We made sure we had enough of the team in the video that we're actually talking of it. But in terms of production value, for us, the video was really important for us to really craft that marketing message and make sure people understood exactly what we're trying to do.
I would say with a company like yours, you really do need to look slick. You're talking men's fashion. It needs to be professionally produced. It needs to be really high end so that people trust the quality of your product. I think it varies depending on the message that you're trying to provide.
This is John McCarthy from Walden Tech. I've funded 3 Kickstarter projects. 2 got through and 1 didn't. One didn't get funded. I'm curious, with the number of supporters that you have here, did you do anything to try to turn your supporters into a community that you could then grow? And other than capturing their email and responding to email communications, what did you do to create a community out of it?
We're doing a lot. I think it's a really good point. One of the questions we put on the survey was, do you want to be part, do you want to join the Adventure Spike community? And 96% of people said yes. So that's already 2,500 people that we can in one quick batch add to our newsletter and having had an outreach. But beyond the simpler tasks like that, we're also doing some Kickstarter meetups. We're starting the first one scheduled in San Francisco in mid-October to have. For our Kickstarter backers, there's about 275 that live within an hour of LA. So we're contacting all of them and putting an event together just to get them in the same room together and them who have taken an interest in us early on, have them help craft what's next for us, have them help craft what we're doing right now. So we're doing everything we can to stay engaged with them and have one-on-one conversations as much as possible.
Is there a dressing room for your list?
No dressing.
Do they leave with their clothes?
They should arrive.
For us, we're in a little different position. We have 192 backers, so not as big of a community there. We did the conventional route, put out an email list, and continue to follow up with them. But again, going back to kind of the focus of our business is still distribution. And so for us, the majority of our time, we're still a two-person team right now. The majority of our time goes into taking the validation of the product and getting it to the distributors, the buyers out there.
A lot of my backers who now have bracelets and wear them around tell me that their friends saw it on them and now they want one. And so a lot of the backers now have 5 or 6 other people that want to own this product. So something that I'm intending on doing is sending out a blast to all my backers to tell them that, if they want to, if they have friends, holidays are coming up, something like that, I'll send them 6 bracelets for the price of 5. Go to 6. I'm not sure how that's going to work. It'll be an interesting experiment. Is mine still going around, by the way? Oh, there it is. All right.
One last I want to add to there are so many different ways we've explored. I really think it's a super important concept. It doesn't have to involve, let's say San Francisco or a place in person, but also stuff like we've asked them to send us pictures back. We've probably gotten 100 pictures back of it. A few hundred products we've sent out. The feedback is incredible. People give us great feedback. We have these one-on-one meetings and take these pictures and put them on their offices on our website. Create special Kickstarter discount codes to say thank you for being an early backer. We've encouraged them to come into our office or showroom in Boston now, and we've met somebody like in person and had coffee with them or a couple beers on here. So it's been great to see how solid the group is.
Did the impending legislation change behind crowdfunding influence the timing of your Kickstarter campaigns? And looking back, would you still have launched the campaign this year versus next year? There's changing legislation in crowdsourcing. Is that a federal level, I think?
I wasn't aware.
Part of the Jobs Act.
We had no idea that was coming. I think, in fact, it wouldn't come though, even if we had known. For us, it was by the beginning of May, let's say we had really hit what we were calling our goal. We had found the product that was right for us, the right blend, and the right construction. So we were ready to go, and we certainly wouldn't have been convinced to wait around it.
Yeah, I'd say the same for us. We had our product that we were ready to move forward with, and that was the design factor. We just wanted to get going as quick as possible.
Likewise.
More questions?
Going back to the 50% product reward series, so you're saying that if your shirt normally would cost $40, if people, once it gets funded in the store, if it costs $40, you're finding that people were donating $80 for the chance to have the shirt first and because they believe in your story? Or was there any other sort of added incentive, like to get a personal note from the designer or something like that? Is that what you're saying? That it's twice the price of the...
Yeah, so for us it was at a discounted rate. So we were selling a shirt on Kickstarter for $80. Let's say that we actually valued at $80. So it was 100% in that case. So you wouldn't necessarily double it. You don't have to double it, but there are a lot of projects out there with kind of some other softer rewards. The first project I ever backed on Kickstarter was 3 years ago. It was a movie called Blue Like Jazz, and every prize on there, if I recall correctly, I got a phone call from the producer, that was so exciting to me because I read this book, really liked the book, and wanted to see it become a movie. So that cost them nothing but months and months of their time, I suppose. But it would be a soft benefit that I value enough to put in $25. So I think it just totally depends on what you're doing.
Well, Aman, my last question for you is, so you raised, what was it, 12 times what you had planned to raise?
Yeah.
Did you wish midway that you could cap
how much one could raise on Kickstarter?
You can. As I understand, Pebble did. I think that you can limit the number of rewards at each tier. So what I understood is that their campaign actually just ended up fizzling away. They capped all the reward levels right above where they were. We had no intention of doing that. That being said, we also had no intention of being late. So for us, it was like, we'll take all these orders and we'll get them out on time. And, I think reality hit a couple weeks after the campaign ended, and we said, it turns out that the supply chain was completely different for 50 samples, up to let's say 2 weeks. So probably should have considered it.
Is there a last question?
So I have a product or a service that helps people learn Chinese characters quicker and easier and search them better than camera OCR or handwriting it. And I applied to Kickstarter and they didn't accept me. Is that because it's software and not an actual tangible product, or did I just not accept it? Because I have a patent on it and I have a free iPhone app. Ready that can offer that.
When I saw, I read every detail of Kickstarter rules and suggestions before I got started, and one of the pieces that I saw that may be the reason they shut me down is that they want a definable start and end to your project. It has to be a contained project. It's not about launching a business, although that's often the result of a successful campaign. So maybe you weren't clear in the way that you wrote it as a candidate.
Is it possible to work with you and make it worth their while?
Talk is great.
Thank you.
When was that? When did you apply?
I applied a few months ago. It's Sunrise Method. That's the app, sunrisemethod.com. I think it's just, I'm not familiar with what they want to read or hear.
Yeah.
Maybe you're more familiar.
Spin a little.
Yeah, spin it.
Yeah.
We'll talk. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Kyle, Ben, Andrew, and Aman. Again, the purpose of tonight is to raise social media awareness and network. And I just want to say thank you. The coolest thing is all three of these projects are Mass Innovation Nights alumni. That's why we have them here. And that's the coolest part of Mass Innovation Nights. So our next event is 10/10, October 10th.